What's up, guys? In this episode of Roll Off Rundowns, we sit down with haulers from Ohio, Wisconsin, and San Diego to talk about the trends that we're seeing across the country in the dumpster rental industry. You'll definitely want to stick around with till the end because they're going to share what they are doing to prepare to capitalize on the most profit in 2027. All right, this is a good one. Let's jump in. All right, well, this year, we put out our second annual dumpster rental industry benchmark report, and this report was our biggest yet. It had over 1,600 haulers and over 640,000 different job rentals that we looked at with the data to come up with these benchmark reports. And what we're really seeing are trends in the industry. So today, we're going to be talking about those trends. And the first one that I want to jump into, because it was really interesting, was that the 20-yard dumpster overtook the 30-yard dumpster for the most rented dumpster in the last 12 months. So, if we think about that, when you're buying your next round of dumpsters or how you're set up today, is the 20-yard something you're thinking about, or is it more of the 30-yard, or is it something else? Isaac, I will start with you on this one.
Right now for us, we're still seeing a 30-yard, probably 2-to-1 lead, but we're pushing for that in our advertising. So I don't know that affects. I would say we've got a biased opinion because we're pushing for the 30 yards and really, really slacking off, even mentioning the 20 yards.
Is there a reason that you're pushing on the 30 yards in your area? And by the way, for our audience, you're located in Ohio.
Yeah, so we're Southwest Ohio. The 30-yard dumpster is the most popular around here on the job site still, and we are pushing for that commercial contractor like crazy. So just because of the audience we're looking for, we are shoving that as hard as we can for a couple of reasons. One being we just got into the commercial CDL size dumpsters 2 years ago, so we're still trying to push our inventory for that. And for us, being in the Midwest, we're very spoiled with really cheap dump fees. So the difference in cost of goods for carrying, dumping, operating 20 yards versus 30 yards are fairly similar to us, and the price is way higher. I mean, our average, I was just looking earlier, our average 30-yard dumpster rental right now is $867. Our average 20-yard, and I'll tell you here real quick because I've got my docket reports up. I'm sorry, average 30-yard dumpster rental is $860, $861. Average 20-yard is $567.41. So there's a huge profit difference there if you start breaking down cost of goods. So That's why we're pushing for the 30s.
Justin, you're also in the Midwest and Wisconsin. Are you seeing the same thing? Are you pushing 30s more than 20s, or is it something different?
So I've noticed the industry, at least a lot of the smaller haulers that kind of started around the COVID time, myself included, have really kind of branched out into that bigger market. And one thing that I've noticed is all my competitors that started around the same time as me really kind of moved into the 30s. And I just decided we were just going to stay in our lane, kind of the niche that we were in. So our biggest is actually a 20-yard. We don't actually do 30 yards. So, and that being said, the 20 yards are definitely our best seller. And obviously we push for the same reason as Isaac said, we push for the 20 yards over the 15 and 10 yards because more or less they're just more profitable.
Makes sense. So two different scenarios, both in the Midwest. Let's jump all the way over to the West in California for Julian. What are you guys seeing?
Yeah. So, I mean, I can see why there would be an overtaking of 20s versus 30s. So like in the West Coast, 30 is really an odd size. So for us, people are going to run the traditional, like the low boys, the 10-yarders, 20s, 40s, 15s and 30s are really an odd size that you don't really see too commonly. And I think a lot of that comes back to kind of like what Justin said, if you kind of started around that COVID timeframe, if you bought a package, you were seeing a lot of the, dump trailer and a 15-yard package. But as you start kind of growing and scaling your business, you realize that if you order 20s, you can rent it as a 10, a 15, or a 20. So it doesn't make sense to limit yourself at the same price point, basically, for a dumpster. And it's a perfect in-between, like medium size for a contractor. If they're doing like let's say a kitchen remodel, maybe they don't need a 40-yard for us. And a 20 is a perfect size. But kind of to Isaac's point, when we're thinking about numbers and justifying a purchase of a dumpster 20 versus a 40, it's hard for us to swallow the cost of a 20 when the 40s are giving me so much more. And the same operational expenses. I mean, we run mostly tandem axle trucks. We have one non-CDL, but the drivers are still making the same. The fuel is the same, and it just doesn't make sense to run them. But obviously, we do have an abundance of 20-yard dumpsters just because the market's there, and we got to fulfill that little pocket, so to say. But yeah, I mean, I can see why the 20s are kind of taking over the 30s. Also, it kind of seems like 30s are an East Coast thing out here. I mean, whenever we get, like, let's say a broker that calls from the East Coast, they're always asking for 30s. We don't run 30s out here. It's always a 40-yard dumpster.
That's great insight. Isaac, you mentioned earlier, COVID may have drawn some of the, and Justin, you said the same thing, COVID may have drawn these people to more 20-yard dumpsters that were starting out. Do you think that there's a lot more competition that is running 20-yard dumpsters now that those people are a little more established, and that's why the 20 has taken over nationally?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I can think of a half a dozen companies here in town that are running single axle trucks that their biggest dumpster is a 20-yard. And because of the saturation of that and advertising anywhere from Facebook Marketplace to hard advertising, is you're going to see an influx in that. I mean, to throw a curveball in that, before we had 30 yards, we had 25 yards. That was our number one product because I pushed and pushed and pushed it. Not that I'm big enough to make a difference in the market, but as soon as I bought the 30s, our 25 yards sat all the time. So I sold most of them off last year and bought more 30s with the money because they were sitting there resting. So I think you can tweak the market with enough people like that to make a difference for sure.
Would you agree with that, Justin?
Yeah, 30 yards and 40 yards are a big thing in my area in Wisconsin. Pretty much everybody has them. So when I started the business, we were filling a niche that a lot of the big roll-off companies really weren't filling. 20 yards they had, but that was the smallest size. So once we started growing, a lot more people came into the industry. So we weren't filling that niche quite as good because of the competition. But a lot of my competition has since moved from the non-standard rail trailers and got hook lift trucks, and everybody wants 30 yards. So I don't know that I'm making the right decision by not getting 30 yards, but I know for my company, none of our equipment is capable of hauling a 30-yard dumpster, right? So I would kind of have to start another business within my business to get into the 30 yards. And that's just not something I'm willing to do right now because we're able to grow with the sizes that we have. And that's really the main reason. That's the main reason why we don't do 30s.
That makes perfect sense. Switching gears a little bit, staying with the 30, but talking about pricing. And Isaac, you run a bunch of 30s, so this question will be for you. In the benchmark report, one of the findings was kind of interesting because it showed that the 30-yard is basically flat, whether as far as pricing goes, whether it's 7 days, 10 days, 14 days. The average that we saw nationally was anywhere from 713 to 876, which falls in the range that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And every other size that we looked at climbs with time. So are you charging a flat project rate on your 30s? And do you think that might be leaving money on the table?
So no, we always charge a daily after. So for our big contractors that we're hitting after hard, we do a 10-day rental and then it's $12 a day after that. Because yes, you are leaving money on the table. We're not going after, there's a couple of small local companies here that are going after the house builders. The house builders want a dumpster on there for 3 months straight. I don't have the inventory to cover something like that if I wanted to. I want to see my dumpsters as many times a week as I can. So what we're seeing with that is I hardly ever see a dumpster sit more than 30 days. But if I hit that 30-day mark, I'm still okay at that dollar amount. I'm not the cheapest dollar amount or the longest dumpster rental period in my industry. I'm kind of right in the middle, and I'm okay with that.
Julian, in the West, what dumpster size are you seeing sitting the longest?
That's a good question. So I think right now on the West Coast, there is an abundance of construction being built. So just from talking to all the local folks, many of which are running like the trailers, the 15s, the 20s, everything's being pushed out right now. Whatever you have is going out just because of the amount of work out here. But what's really being asked right now of all of us is 40s, 20s, and the low boys for concrete. So I guess the 15s and the 30s would be that odd size that isn't being rented out as much. But, you know, if that's all you have, that's what they'll take. You're not too far off from a 20 and you're not too far off from a 40. So they'll take it.
Do you look at how long things are sitting on job sites? And if you do, what's the longest that you're seeing these days?
Yeah. So for us specifically, just because we do cater a lot to that contractor, developer, and we are targeting those longer job sites, just because we are doing porta potties and fencing. So you kind of get everything all in one. And that's kind of what we're looking for. So we might take a little bit of a hit on the dumpster. And it's a give and take. Dumpster might sit an extra week, but you're getting that recurring service from the porta potties and the fencing. You just have to make sure it makes sense to you financially, and you don't want a dumpster sitting, kind of like what Isaac said. You don't want it to sit there for a month. So you do, like for us, if it sits longer than X amount of time frame, then we are going after a daily rate. But most of the time, we have drivers cleaning up the porta potties, and we just make small talk with them. Hey, you know, this one's looking full, and then let's get it swapped out. It's just a real easy conversation to add another exchange in there. Make sure that they don't stay stagnant.
Absolutely. And another interesting thing that we saw in the benchmark report, which is contradictory to what we were just talking about, is that overall rental duration shortened across the board and across the country. So for an example, 15 yards dropped from 15 days to 12 days, 40 yards dropped from 18 to 14 days. Justin, are your customers turning cans faster? And are you seeing that in your area?
Well, like for us, yeah, we turn ours very fast. Like our average, at least this time of the year for sure, is about like 2.6. So every dumpster is going out 2.5 times a month. So that would be what, like, I don't know, 12 days on average. Our long-term customers, like bigger construction sites or home builders and stuff like that, yeah, the dumpster's sitting there for a long time, maybe 6 months, maybe longer, but we're also turning that dumpster a lot of different times. Like something Isaac said with the home builders, we try to avoid those too. Unless it's wintertime. We will let them sit on for home builders in the wintertime, but the home builders want a 20 yard there, like he said, for like 3 months, and they're going to turn it once or twice. But other larger construction projects, sometimes we might have 2 or 3 dumpsters on a particular site, and we're flipping those every dumpster once a week, you know, sometimes even more than that. So I'm not noticing really any difference, but kind of our whole business model is quick turns. And I think with the smaller size dumpsters in general, like 15 yards, we have a lot of 15 yards for roofers and stuff like that. Those dumpsters are only sitting for a couple of days on average. Now there is longer ones. We will rent them for a month for, you know, certain construction projects and stuff like that. But the average is less than a week for us.
Isaac or Julian, have either of you seen faster turns in the last 12 months?
Yeah, I think it's seasonal to what you're doing too. I mean, like we do a lot. I mean, like we just did a job site a couple weeks ago where we did 23 turns in 2 days. So I mean, like we see a lot of that during the summertime where we've got a crew that's coming in to do something specialty where they just need to turn, you know, fast. That seems to hit when the weather's good here, and it doesn't ever happen when the weather's bad. But yeah, so I do see that in the summertime here a lot with that flavor of contractor. I just ran numbers. Our average dumpster sitting 8.87 days, so just shy of 9 days.
Gotcha. So you're actually underneath the national average. What about you, Julian?
Yeah, so for us, dumpsters don't typically sit for very long unless they're on those like projects, and then it's kind of everything goes in phases. Framing, you're gonna incur a lot of scrap. Then when you get into certain aspects like plumbing, they're not going to be as fast. So it's a give and take, kind of like what I was talking about earlier. So just different phases of construction projects. But luckily for us, California, we have pretty fair weather year round. So there's really no slow time for us. I mean, maybe December when contractors, developers take a couple extra weeks off. But other than that, our weather's really nice.
Okay, if we look at customer mix across the nation, we break down this report by region. So the Midwest, Southeast, Northeast, et cetera. And when we looked across the nation, nationally, contractors and commercial accounts, so that, the roofers, the home builders, those large construction accounts, they account for 54% of the volume. But in the Midwest is the most residential heavy area. And that's 40% residential, which is much higher than other parts of the country. Justin, I'll start with you. Does that match what you're seeing?
Yeah, in a sense it is. It really depends on time of the year for us too, because we get so cold here. This time of the year, it's probably about 50-50. And then in the winter, I mean, we severely slow down. So like what we would do in August for dumpster rentals versus January, we're usually at like 50%. And in the wintertime, you got a lot less residential. So it might even be more than that. I don't have my computer up, unfortunately, to look at the report. But I would say this time of the year's, 50-50, maybe 60-40. And then in the wintertime, it's going to be probably 70-30 towards the commercial and construction side.
That makes a lot of sense. Isaac, you said earlier that you guys do a lot to focus on getting those commercial and, contractor accounts. Do you see that residential pickup as well, or is it something that you're not focused on?
Well, I think we've tweaked it ourselves. I mean, we used to, before we got into the commercial industry where we're at now, it was a good 50-50 mix. We're mildly guessing about 80-20 right now. And I mean, that like I said, we've tweaked that a lot. I mean, like if you follow me on Facebook at all, you won't even know I have small dumpsters. Excuse me. I do not advertise. I don't show. It's not an interest of mine. So we try and almost deter that kind of customer in our push right now.
That's a good segue actually to the next question, Isaac, because in the report, the advice that we give is that you should be prioritizing those B2B relationships over residential marketing because it's more profitable. When you're in growth mode, especially for folks that are listening that are newer, where are you actually putting those time and money into developing those relationships? Is there anything that you think that's special that helps you gain those?
Yeah. So, I mean, I like to describe it as the salad bar. We're doing several different things at once to keep that flavor mix going. One of the things we're doing is legitimately B2B networking. I mean, we're part of several different organizations. B&I is one of them. H7's another local regional one here. We've got several real estate group and investor groups that we're part of. That is a free, if nothing else, a meal, an evening. That's a really effective way to get yourself out there. I mean, we've got one group right now. Last year we did over 80 dumpsters just in that group, and they're right now, I think we've already passed that this year. I mean, we've got one contractor in there that has 10 dumpsters out at a time, which to me, I mean, like that's priceless advertising. Then on the other side, we've got a little bit of Google ads running. We've got a lot of SEO running, and then we have hammered out our social media presence and branding this year a lot. So that's why I like to say it's a salad bar. There's not one in particular that we're doing. We're just kind of focusing on several of those together to bring it back together. And then we are hammering out we've gotten 160 5-star reviews this year on Google. So we're really chasing that hard, which all of those together bring it back to a hardcore in the middle.
Nice. And by the way, your salad bar better have a chocolate fountain at the end because
that's right.
Not coming to it otherwise. So.
That's right. That's right.
Julian, I know you do a lot of networking as well to develop those B2B relationships. Can you discuss what you guys are doing in San Diego?
Yeah. So for us, the way I look at everything is just like a fishing pond, not a salad bar, but it's like my little fishing pond, right? Mm-hmm. And everything is another line in the water just to catch the fish. That's how like my analogy is. So obviously B2B business is the majority of our business, and we're 90-10. 90% of our business is the big contractors, developers, industrial buildings, things like that. We do very little residential. And if we're doing residential, it's like tear-offs, roof tear-offs or something like that. But we try not to go after the residential client. But we network a lot with business owners. I personally go out and sell a lot of my jobs. We do have virtual assistants that help out with that in the Philippines. I also have a sales team, so they're going out meeting with clients, talking about their projects, their aches, their pains, like everything that they need on a job site. And I think from a standpoint of being a site service company, we can basically relieve a lot of that pain with just one phone call. So it makes it a little bit easier for us just because we can provide a lot of different resources. On top of that, I'm also a general contractor. So it's like if they need something else, we can always integrate a different vertical to help them out. So whatever it is.
We recently held one of our roundtables that we do regionally across the country, and shameless plug, be on the lookout if you ever want to network in an intimate group with a bunch of haulers like yourself. Be on the lookout for those because those are really fun and you don't have to use Docket to come. But at our last one, Isaac was talking about brokers, and brokers is an interesting topic because if you talk to Isaac, you'll think they're great. But I've also talked to people that despise brokers. So let me just break it down real quick. There are brokers that are very large in the country that have more of a site services model. And if you are a Target, if you are a Costco, if you're a very large construction company, you want one neck to choke. And you don't want to work with a bunch of, a hauler, a porta potty rental company, a fencing company, of this, of that in these regions. You want to be able to broker these deals out, and then that large organization will come to you, to the broker, to deal with that project that they're working on. And these companies have millions and millions and millions of dollars that they're spending every month on PPC, paid advertising on Google. So they are actually gaining the leads in your area sometimes and then reselling them to you. That's just a reality of it. But unfortunately, a lot of haulers we work with, they don't have the money to compete with them, nor could they get the relationships at places like a Target or a franchise across a restaurant chain across the country. But if you use them in the right way, you can use them in a very lucrative way. So the question goes to Isaac here. Revenue from brokers in the benchmark report was 5.5% of the industry volume. Tell us about your experience with brokers.
I would wildly guess, I haven't broke down the report, that I'm way higher than that. I mean, we rely heavily on them right now, and I want more. I shared that with you guys last weekend. I'm hungry for more. I mean, our biggest projects have come from brokers. We've got really good working relationships with several right now. I was just telling you, Matt, a few minutes ago, I'm adding up. I think we've got 25 to 30 brokers that we're actively working with, whether that's every couple months. I just got a text from a broker a second ago. We're taking 2 dumpsters to a job tomorrow for them. I did one on my way home from our event there the other night, an emergency call for them. But no, some of our biggest jobs that I would never see in my industry come from brokers at this point. So I don't haggle with them. I'm not cutting them a deal. If they like my numbers and we can work well together, we work well together. If not, it's one of those, you can fight them or you can work with them, and I choose to work with them.
Julian, you had shared your experience with brokers at our last event too. Can you share a little bit about your philosophy of working with them?
Yeah, absolutely. So just something, I talk to a lot of people just across the country that call for advice or anything like that. But something that I tell people is don't get too excited or don't jump on it too quick to work with a broker, just because kind of like brokers and government work, if you are taking on a job, and like Isaac, he did, a tremendous amount of dumpsters in just a couple of days. But for somebody that's trying to get in and a broker gives you that opportunity and you can't fulfill it, it looks really bad on you, and they're not going to call you. There's always an A player, a B player, a C player, and they're going to go down the list. So if you can't fulfill it, they're going to move on. So for us personally, we work with some brokers, very select, and I choose to be very select with who I work with. The reason why is I don't want to put so many eggs in one basket and then potentially get that taken away at some point for whatever reason because they found somebody cheaper. So I invest in myself. I invest in what we have, our network, building those relationships with other businesses, going to these construction sites, offering our services, and that has paid dividends for us. Now, obviously, there's going to be the brokers that we work with, and they know what our pricing structure is, and we provide a premium service. I do have a good amount of trucks running around every day. We do have a substantial amount of dumpsters. So when it comes to like projects, we can take them on. But like Isaac said, we're not going to give you a break. Actually, I'm going to be more expensive. Even though I'm not paying to acquire that client, I'm making you look good. You're going to look good for your client. They're going to keep calling you, and then you have an A player to keep going back to. So obviously they're going to pay to play, and we know they have deep pockets. So for that reason, I choose to mark up my costs because at the same time, I am taking away from my own clients to fulfill their orders. And that's kind of how I look at it. But everyone has their own way of working with them. And I just decide to reinvest into what we have going on.
And what's your mix look like as far as, are you close to that 5.5% of revenue, or is it higher than that for your business with brokers?
It's a little bit higher. Yeah. So we have the brokers that we work with, we're taking on we need 40 dumpsters in the next 7 days. Like, so they're high ticket sales. They're not like the ones and twos. They're typically, we're going to need X amount over the next couple of days, or we have this type of project. So that's the kind of projects that we take on. And, other than that, like you said earlier, Matt, I can't go to Walmart distribution center and be like, hey, my name's Julian. And, that's just not going to happen. So that's where these brokers come into play. And I've made some really good connections, and I've been able to foster those relationships through going to different events. The Waste Expo has been great for us. And just keep building these relationships. And now we know these people on a personal level, so they know what we're about and how we operate, and vice versa. So,
Justin, do you work with brokers? And if you do, what's been your experience?
We've had a great experience overall with brokers. And one thing that I never really understood why like a large construction company would hire a broker. And I asked a guy one time, and I thought this was really interesting because I never really looked at it this way. But a lot of these big construction companies, they're traveling from state to state or areas that they don't necessarily know. And I asked one of them, I was like, why'd you hire the broker? Why didn't you just hire us? And he goes, well, we travel all over the United States to do these jobs, and we call the same broker because they have somebody in that area that they trust, and we trust who they trust. And I never really looked at it that way, but it was an interesting conversation I had with the guy. And we, like Julian said, we work with a select group of brokers. And one thing I think the brokers like about us is we fill those smaller dumpsters in that niche that maybe another company might not. So they don't call us. They have a guy for 30 and 40 yards, right, or whatever in our area. And so we're able to provide, a different to a different clientele for the brokers as well.
Great. And Isaac, you've said this before, so I'll just repeat it for our audience. But when Isaac goes to events, he tries to exchange broker lists with other people to say like, hey, you probably have two that I don't have. I might have a few that you don't have. So if you're wanting to work with brokers and you're getting to a size where you can support it, like Julian said, don't shoot yourself in the foot. That's a great tip from Isaac to network with others about their broker list. All right, we're going to move on to the next section here in the benchmark report, which is about add-on fees. And I don't think it's any surprise that the number one add-on fee across the country is the overweight charge, that and to the tune of $140 million industry-wide. 83% of all add-on revenue came from that overweight charge. So, and I think that when we looked regionally, there are actually some regions that are not utilizing that overweight charge for whatever reason. Isaac, when you're like, how do you handle overweight, and how do you handle especially when someone pushes back on that?
We'll just get a lot of pushback, but luckily, I mean, you've got timestamps and GPS tracking basically between everything, and then we also have We have live LTE cameras to show, I mean, like, this is where I was at. I went straight to the dump with your load. This is your load ticket. If you got a problem with it, we got major issues past that. Typically, though, full transparency, I mean, we don't have a lot of kickback on it. It is what it is. We're upfront with it. I mean, we discuss that with every customer. This is what you're getting with it. If you go over it, this is what you're getting with it. Luckily, we're in, like I said before, we're spoiled rotten. I mean, for everybody that's nationwide here, our dump fees are $30 a ton. You don't see that anywhere else. So, I mean, like with my 30 yard, I've got 4 tons included with that before we even start charging back. That's pretty decent. So we don't deal with a ton of overage until we get into structural, which we've done a lot of that. We tear down a lot of houses, that kind of thing. And I'm right up front and honest with them. I mean, I can tell you, if you're loading with this size machine, the dumpsters are going to be this heavy. You know, if you're doing this, the dumpsters are going to weigh that. So expect some overage fees on that. And we don't have a lot of kickback on it.
Do you mean when they take their excavator and they're just pounding it down like this? That
exactly.
Doesn't make it overweight?
Yep. It does, but I've actually, like, when you do enough of it, like, I can tell you, like, you have a 200 series excavator and you're loading 30 yard structural, they're going to be somewhere between 1,800 or 18,000 and 25,000 pounds a piece. Like, that's all day long. I can tell you that because that's what we do. So when you've done enough of it and you can tell a customer that, they're like, okay, that's fine. You know, and I can also tell you, in a 200 series machine, you can fit between 250 and 300 square feet of structure in that dumpster. So it actually helps educate the customer and helps them make a better decision. You know, I'm tearing down a house. How many square feet's the house? Okay, it's 1,500. Okay, you're going to need this many dumpsters. They're going to weigh that much, and we can get you done in this amount of time. How far is it to the dump? We can do that in a day. We'll send 2 trucks out. Boom. We can tear down a 3,000 square foot house in a day if you've got the machine to do it. We'll send 2-3 trucks out, 5 dumpsters, and you'll be in and out of there in 10 hours if you can load us that fast. That educates the customer then to the expectation, instead of surprising them on the backside with, holy crap, you didn't tell me any of this, blah, blah, blah. You know, so it creates a more trusting experience, in my opinion, to do it that way versus surprise, you know, here's your overage bill.
Yeah, no one likes to be surprised. And I love the educational component of that too. Julian, what's been your experience?
Yeah, so for us, that's like every day my office team here is going through receipts and updating everything and sending those additional invoices for overweight. So kind of like Isaac, education is a big part of all of this. I think there's just a little bit more educating that goes into those residential clients. Oh, yeah. They look at a pile and they're like, oh, it's not that much. I don't know what not that much means, but I know that you went overweight and they're shocked by the pricing. Now, for us, if you're going overweight, we're going to charge you $98 a ton for every ton over, depending on where you're at within Southern California. Tonnage prices can go up to $200 a ton or more. So pricing is going to fluctuate depending on what it is. And obviously, we're still trying to make a profit on top of that. So with contractors, they kind of already know what they're dealing with and they have deeper pockets. But yeah, absolutely. When it comes to the demolition side, we do take into account what they're demoing and kind of give them a full visual of what to expect. Sure, it might be 5, 6, 7 dumpsters, but we can break it down to X amount of tons. And most of the time we've been doing it long enough to where we're pretty spot on. And that's with tonnage and dumpster count.
Justin, you deal with more residential folks. Do you get any pushback on the overweight fees from them?
There's usually not pushback. People will just shut off their card or ignore the invoice for overages. So they're smarter than that. They know. And that's something I think you're going to kind of deal with, whether, you know, it's a shady contractor or a residential. For us, we have cheap dump fees here. We only include 1 ton in all of our dumpsters. So it doesn't matter who it is. That's something a little bit different. We try to cater towards the residential and like smaller contractors in that way. So we keep our upfront costs lower by only including 1 ton. And then basically what I realized was the contractor who puts 5 tons in a dumpster and the little old lady who's just cleaning out Christmas decorations, the lady's getting screwed and the contractor's getting a deal. So I changed that pricing a few years ago and all of our customers seem to like it. Because even a contractor, just because he's a contractor and he's filling the dumpster doesn't mean the dumpster is going to be heavy per se, right? So that we keep our upfront costs lower and then recover that cost on the back end. So it's a very different business model than I think a lot of people do.
Beyond overweight, there's fuel surcharges. Fuel prices have definitely gone up recently, which is hurting everyone, especially Mr. Julian in California, where when he tells you what the gas is, you'll be thankful you don't live there. The extension fees, trip fees, et cetera. There's a lot of extra ones. Isaac, I'll start with you. Which fees are you actually charging in addition to overweight, and which ones have you decided that might not be worth the friction?
We're charging a fuel surcharge. I told you to. We also charge over a week by the day, and then we charge dry run fees. I mean, that's about the only three that we really enforce. The tires, that kind of thing, is an extra. Obviously, refrigerators, but again, we live in the Midwest, where it's a free country instead of California, where it's the People's Republic. So we're a lot more forgiving on that. I mean, if you have a tire in your load at the dump, they don't even say anything. If you've got 20 tires in load, they're going to say something. So we don't have a whole lot of extra little bitties like that. It's mostly just the big ones. We're charging 7% fuel. Odd fact, we're next to one of the biggest, I'm not going to say their name, one of the biggest privately owned waste management companies in the United States right now. A little birdie told me this morning on their front loaders, they're charging 30% fuel surcharge. And I was like, holy shnikes, I don't know if that's true or not, but it was a reliable source that told that to me. I was like, wow, I'm in the wrong industry then. But no, we charge 7%, and at 7%, that's going to, even with our inflated crazy fuel prices right now, that's going to cover about half of our fuel this year, maybe a third to a half right there.
Got it. Justin, how about you? What are the additional charges that you're looking at?
Oh man, I wish I would have put a fuel surcharge in a month or two ago when fuel got high, and then I was just about to do it and fuel went back down, and man, it skyrocketed back up. So that's something I should have done probably, but I thought there was light at the end of that tunnel and I was wrong. Our biggest is overweight fees because we're only charging a ton. So like 65% of our dumpsters, maybe even 70, are going to be over that 1 ton, and that varies how much it is. But that's one of our biggest ones. And then unwanted items, tires and stuff like that. Even sometimes we can dump a tire at the dump and the operators, they look the other way. But if I see it, you're getting charged for it. So even if the dump doesn't charge me, I don't care. I'm taking a picture and you're getting charged for it. And that's actually a big profit. It's a big profit for us. So like a TV or a tire, say we get $10, we charge $50 for it. So every tire that's in a dumpster, I'm getting $40 in profit on top of that. And really, it's just because it's a pain in the butt. If the operators tell me there's a tire, I got to take it across the street, I got to reload it and do all that kind of stuff. I don't want to do that. So I don't care if people throw them in there, but if they do, it better be worth my time. And then the next one's going to be like, this is more rare, like a dry run fee, or an overfilled dumpster. And we hammer people on that. An overfilled dumpster is $150. Now we're pretty lenient with that, but $150, and we're not picking it up. So, and then the dry run fee, that stuff happens like at, a tenant's parked in the way or neighbor or, stuff like that. But it's pretty rare. I'd say it's maybe a dozen times a year, maybe a little bit more than that, for the dry run fee. Usually we'll be on site, knocking on doors, calling, and we can get somebody to move. It is an inconvenience, but, we already drove that far to get there. We're going to do what we can to get the dumpster, while we're there.
For sure. Thank you for sharing your experience. And Julian, before you tell us about your extra fees, please start by saying, what was the highest diesel price you've seen in California in the recent past?
Yeah, so $8 was what it is. And then obviously, like for us, we get fuel delivery. So people are like, oh, you get fuel delivered in bulk. That's actually more expensive because now it's a convenience factor. My drivers don't have to go out, and we actually pay a premium rate to get fuel delivered. Definitely added a fuel surcharge as everything skyrocketed. And we did it right away. We didn't wait. I said the best time to do it is right now. We're going to get some pushback, but we're just going to do it. And we're right around that 7% as well. So it's enough to capitalize a nice chunk of change to be able to offset that, because our fuel costs really increased tremendously. And not just fuel, but also dump fees, because the dumps are now running their equipment and it's a higher cost to operate that. And so everything went up. So we had to increase our tonnage. We had to increase our fuel costs, maintenance. So all of that, we kind of accounted and figured out what we needed to do. Extra days we're adding on as additional fees. And then something that we do, if we can't pick it up, obviously we're going to charge you a dry run fee. But like Justin said, we're already there. We're trying to pick it up. So as soon as we can't just show up and pick it up, the clock starts. It's $175 for standby, and I'll, offset it to however long. But if I'm there for a long time, you're getting charged $175. If I'm there for 15, 20 minutes, and you're getting charged half. And that's just, my drivers have to go. Like, they have a very tight schedule, and there's a lot of deliveries, pickups, exchanges, compactors, and they're really on a time crunch. So in front of me, I keep a monitor, and I'm seeing where the trucks are at, what's idling, why they've been idling. So I'm constantly on it, as well as my operations manager. Just, we try to be really efficient with what we have out there. And then obviously tires and all that. Like, California is just really strict on all these different things. Appliances, tires is a big one, e-waste. So there's just a long list of additional fees, and all these account for a nice chunk of change. And kind of like Justin said, obviously, maybe like we're pretty good to all the people here at the landfills. Obviously I started driving, so I made sure I treated everyone with respect and the way I would want to be treated. But all those people have kind of moved up in their roles over the last 6 years, and they started seeing us grow. So they might not say something, but we're still adding that fee, because when there is a new hire and he's like, hey, there's 6 tires, you got to load those back up. A 40-yard height or on a roll-off truck, it's about to like your neck. So lifting tires, lifting appliances, it's a pain in the butt. So there's definitely a penalty coming with that, and we have to take it to a metal recycler.
I want to move on to a topic that is hot in the industry right now, and it wasn't in our benchmark report, but it's something that's worth noting, and that Julian mentioned earlier, it's franchise agreements. So the city has an agreement with the franchise, and so basically in some cities, and this question is going to be for you, Julian, since we don't have this in the Midwest, but some cities, if you drop a can inside the city limits, it's considered illegal, and they can actually impound your dumpster because the city has handed one company the exclusive right to rent dumpsters in that area. So haulers are now suing over this, and there was actually, I'll read here, the Arkansas Supreme Court just struck down one of these bans as an illegal government-backed monopoly, and there's a big case in Texas right now with our friend Josh Roman of American AF Dumpsters, who is suing the city of Waxahachie, Texas for this very thing. Julian, have you ever lost a job or a can because it was impounded to a franchise agreement? What happened? And just give us the lay of the land of where you're at, because others might be dealing with this too in their part of the country.
I'm not going to say every city, every county is in a franchise, but the majority are. So like you said, there is exclusivity when it comes to waste, and there's going to be, the big players that can do the front loaders, the side loaders, the compactors, and all that good stuff. But a lot of us out here in California are classified illegal waste haulers, and that means we can't go to the city and get proper licensing to have a business license. We can't, basically, they're just not going to give it to you because there's only one person. So that makes us all illegal. But when we think about all of this, if you call the local trash company, they just can't service you in the manner that most of the people need to get service. Construction sites, now it becomes a health and safety issue. And that's what they argue. It's a lot of health and safety, but when they can't get rid of waste, that is a health and safety issue. So there's somebody able to fulfill that void and take care of it. Yeah, if when you're dealing with that, you're dealing with your dumpster's being impounded, then it's a substantial fee. So when we start thinking of a dumpster cost, let's say anywhere from $4,000 to out here of a 40-yard cost about $8,200, and they're charging you, for example, I'm going to use me as an example. I was being charged $3,000 a dumpster to get it back. It's a pretty serious financial hit.
Okay, well, it's an interesting topic. And even though, Julian, you might be one of the only ones raising your hand, we have customers across the country that are definitely in this situation. In Texas, we have it. I'm sure there's parts of the Northeast that have it. But, that Arkansas hauler won his case. So if courts keep siding with independents, we'll have to keep an eye on what changes across the country. But I do think this will take some time. So we'll keep an eye on it, and we'll keep reporting out from our side of a docket. All right, let's switch gears here. A few more questions to go. And this is about online booking. So can someone book a dumpster off your website? Or if you're working with, sometimes that's residential, but it can also be commercial. And can someone, use your portal to rent more dumpsters if it's a construction company where they don't want to deal with you directly, or they just want the convenience? What's interesting, the benchmark report said that only 5.3% of rentals industry-wide were booked online. To me, that's a huge opportunity for haulers to get a leg up on their competition if their site does not offer that. But what's interesting is that the Midwest was number one at 11%. So for our Midwest boys here, I'll start with you, Isaac. Do your customers book online today? And if not, why?
They do. And I think we're sitting right there in that 10 to 12% range. The biggest reason they don't rent for me right now is I don't have inventory. If you don't have inventory on your website, you can't rent them. So, and that's my biggest fight right now, is like when you're low, or you've got a lot of quick turnaround when you've been out and you're not catching up to yourself, every day is blocked out on there. That I think we would have a higher volume of rentals if we had more inventory available.
Justin, I actually think you don't use online booking. Is that true?
No, I was not a proponent of it when it first came out, but I'm happy to say it's been like 3.5 years we've been doing it online, and it is by far, it's probably close to 50% of our bookings now. Yeah.
Wow.
And I've actually been buying more dumpsters that I may not rent just so my website shows that I have them. And I know that seems stupid. I mean, as we grow, we're still renting them out, but I always want inventory so that people can book online. And that's hard to do, especially this time of the year. That's very hard to do because we're so busy, because we have to pack, 6 months of winter, and then we have 6 months of summer. So we're packing in a lot of construction and a lot of cleanouts and a lot of stuff this time of the year, but we are way over 30%. I wish I had my reports up, but we're way over 30% on our online bookings. And I was completely wrong about the online booking.
Hey, it's in my book, it's okay as long as you're willing to evolve. And I'm glad you guys did, because now you're getting a bunch of business from it.
Yeah, and it's slowly picked up every year. Like when we first started, it was maybe 5-10%, and then it was 20%. And this year, it's got to be close to half of our dumpsters.
Wow, that's amazing. Julian, what do you guys see? And I know you guys do online booking.
We do, but at the same time, we rather have everyone call. Like we don't want people ordering online. What we have seen an increase of is fraud out here on the West Coast. And I think in areas that are just kind of surrounded by a lot of construction, a lot of development, it's real easy to get those online bookings, be happy about it, and then be like, oh, we got to deliver. You deliver, you go pick up your dumpster, and then a couple of days later, you get hit with a chargeback. So for that reason, we were dealing with that a lot late last year. So for this year, 2026, we said, all right, everyone that does an online booking, we actually just got one a couple hours ago, and something just doesn't look right. So it's a number from the East Coast, and that's kind of been a trend. A lot of the numbers from the East Coast are what's coming up as fraud. And just my background dealing with skimming devices and things like that, I just don't want to risk it. So we just say call. And if we can basically talk to these folks and see what they need, maybe it's legitimate. Most of the time it's not. So we just cancel the order right then and there.
And I just want to call out for our audience that may not know this about Julian. When he talks about his background in skimmers, he wasn't a criminal. He was actually putting away criminals because he was former law enforcement. Well, let's just clarify that part there.
See, I wonder if everyone on the East Coast says it all comes from the West Coast, though, too. You know?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm going to try it out. 951 numbers come away.
So we're going to land the plane here with one last question. The trends that we're seeing in the benchmark report over the last 12 months, they're trends for a reason. Things are going to change. Is there anything that you guys are going to do different with your business in 2027 as you look ahead based on what you're seeing in your area? And I'll start with you, Justin.
Really, I've thought about moving into the bigger dumpsters and stuff, but I'm seeing all the guys that started around the time that I did move into that. And I'm sticking with my guns, right or wrong here, and I'm gonna stay in my lane. And as everyone else moves to the bigger dumpsters, ideally I'm back to the guy where I started, where I was filling that niche. Now I know it's not going to be quite that good as when I first started, because I wouldn't say one of the first, but it was not as well known of a thing when I started. But that's where I'm going to stay, and we're continuing to grow every year, slowly, but we are growing every year, bringing in new dumpsters, getting new customers, and it's been a fun ride. And I'm gonna stay on the roller coaster.
Love it. How about you, Isaac? Any changes you're making in 27?
Our goal is more compactors. That is our focus right now. We want as many pieces of equipment that we don't own as possible that we're taking care of. That's our leverage plan at this point.
And is that a differentiator in your area?
There's only a couple companies that are focusing on it, so I think it won't be a hard apple to pick. That goes back to the broker relationship. It's not as available on the street, and that's why I want to form that relationship with those brokers now.
That's great insight. How about you, Julian? What are you going to do in 27 that might be different?
Yeah. So as we, as we're kind of on the back part of the year now, so this is when we really start crunching numbers, looking at all the reports that you guys provide and seeing what our trends have been, and basically gearing up for 2027. Obviously going through some legal stuff right now that is kind of shaping a new way for Heritage and what we end up doing for 2027. So nothing is set in stone, but something that I kind of tell a lot of people is don't get so caught up on the revenue. It's the profit. So we want to be more profitable in whatever we do. Obviously we have a lot of dumpsters, a lot of equipment, just profit.
I really appreciate that, Julian. I think that's a great place to land our plane. So thank you, gentlemen, and we'll see you in the next one.